all around good kid. Does anybody dislike Frankie? And you like in the world?
Oh, I have an issue with Frankie.
Oh, do you?
No, of course not.
Oh, you'd be surprised. Our old friend Matt George just texted me saying, "Great, I have to listen to you on the radio."
Yeah.
Oh, we got a feud.
Right. Just tell
Matt George.
Anytime Matt George tries to talk trash to you, just tell him to double down again. That's it. You win. That's it. You win for life. You win. Check out Matt George's video "Double Down" about Marvin Bagley. Mm-hmm. I think that's still on the Sactown.
Yeah, it's good content. It's good content. I think Matt also can agree that that's good content. There's our own Chris Watkins, by the way, who had a hand in creating that.
Yes, he did.
That Oscar-esque performance of film.
I've always said, both publicly and privately to Matt, although it's hilarious. It's hilarious. You have to be a special type of guy to be able to laugh at yourself like that and not take yourself too seriously. And you're right, it was good content. So
yeah, and that's the best. Matt is a great guy. We have a lot of fun.
He's okay.
He double dogs it halftime in the media room. He gets 2 hot dogs. So
really?
Wow.
Yeah, double dog guy.
That's a gift.
Halftime hot dogs are a thing in the media, the Kings media room. We all kind of critique each other. Yes. It's rite of passage to get criticized. So.
Frankie, there was a guy earlier on the text line that is very angry at us for not going too far in on the Kings, for praising players, for finally playing hard in the fourth. I think that's De'Aaron Fox, and that the Kings are really in a free fall right now. It's not just Saturday's loss. It's this handful of losses they've had. Frankie, are the Kings a fraud, and are we seeing the real Kings now?
Yeah, it is kind of funny how things unravel after each loss. I mean, it's just you're so not used to seeing it, I guess, when the team's playing this well, but it's not a good feeling. Losing 3 or 4. It's not a good feeling, but they've done this before this season, and they've responded. And until they don't do that, I'm not going to sit and start worrying about the sky falling and what have you. But they have an opportunity tonight to kind of silence some of those voices that are starting to think the Kings are fraudulent. I don't think the Kings are fraudulent. I think that they've had a couple of rough nights offensively, and it shows you how weak this team is when their offense is not clicking. And scoring 95 against Toronto, back to 110 against Minnesota, this is a team that averages 120 points per game. When you don't have all those points, you can see what can happen. And, of course, on the defensive side, that's a different discussion. They had one clear goal, I think, coming in to Saturday night's game. Do not let D'Angelo Russell beat you. Don't let Anthony Edwards beat you. Both beat you in separate halves. So when all those things happen and you kind of lump in the fact that the offense is going through a little bit of a mini funk, it's not great, but they have gone through this before. They went through this at the beginning of the month. They lost 3 or 4. Yeah. They had those back-to-back losses at home against the Lakers and the Hawks. They responded. So now it's time to see if they can respond again. They have, quote-unquote, a favorable stretch coming up. Can they take care of business? We're going to find out.
Yeah, I think, Frankie, you're right on the point there, and I think Coach Brown talked about it too, that their offense has been really spectacular this year, the number 1 offense in the league. So for the last 2 games to be held under what they normally do has been a problem, and if the goal was to slow down Edwards and Russell, they failed on that too. Yet with all that, they had a chance to win. But Coach Brown postgame said, look, we have to get better. He just keeps talking about defense, which I get, but it feels like their best defensive players don't score enough, and their offensive players don't guard enough. And I don't know where he goes from that, because I think you still have to ask more of your guys that play the most minutes, that score the most points, to be better defensively.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to hide people on offense. I mean, there was a couple of plays last game, and what KZ Paula brings on defense, it's undeniable. I mean, he definitely puts a lot of pressure on the ball. He disrupts passing lanes. He's a good defender. But 2 times in a row, the offense ended, there was 2-3 seconds on the shot clock, and the ball ended up in KZ Paula's hands, and the ball hit the side of the backboard on 3-pointer, and that's not his fault. I mean, they didn't bring him in for an offensive punch, but they need more people on the roster. That kind of comes down to what Monty McNair can do. What can Monty do for this roster? They need guys that can do both, like you said. And Davion Mitchell does have that in his bag. We've seen that he can score when the Kings really need it. When he filled in for De'Aaron Fox last year, he did a good job. I think he averaged 16 or 17 points per game in starts last season. And even last game, he had a couple of opportunities on offense where he was able to get in traffic and score. But the Kings need that consistently. They need guys to play both offense and defense. They need 2 sides. But the roster's kind of thin in that regard. And that's why they've been where they've been on defense. So we have about a week and a half to go. I think we have 8-9 days till the deadline. It's tough to know who's really out there, who's really available. I mean, the West is wide open. The Kings are in 3rd place in the standings, but there's only a 5-game or a 3-game stretch, a 3-game gap between themselves and the 10 seed. So Don't know about the Western Conference. Of course, you have the East, where I know the Hornets have been mentioned as a team that could be selling. But beyond those guys that are at the bottom of the East, it's tough to know who's really for sale. But it's got to improve. You need both players, all players to be able to play defense and offense. And right now the Kings are kind of one-sided.
Frankie Cartoscelli, Kings insider for Sactown Sports, joins us. And I'm looking at the history here. The Wolves have won 16 of their last 25 against the Kings, including 5 of 7. I remember as a San Francisco Giants fan as a kid, I remember thinking, is there any way we can go out and get Dale Murphy? And the reason I wanted Dale Murphy from the Braves was not necessarily because I love Dale Murphy. I wanted to get him, and if nothing else, just put him on the bench so we never had to face him. And I feel the same way about D'Angelo Russell. He has to have the Kings have to be the one team he kills Sacramento time and time again. Frankie, you mentioned the standings. I think people are also making a mistake that the Minnesota Timberwolves are some bottom feeder. Here's some news. If the Wolves win tonight, they're 1 game behind the Kings for the 3 seed. This is a better team than their record indicates, and it feels like we've been saying that quite a few times lately about teams.
Oh, yeah, and they're doing it without Karl Anthony Towns, who's one of the best centers in the NBA. I mean, this West is – the Kings have had a really nice start to the season, and I think that they are a good team. The only problem is I think there's a lot of good teams in the West right now. I mean, the Pelicans are eventually going to get back Zion Williamson, and we saw how good they were. The Suns, I still think that they're going to figure it out. There are some teams I think that aren't going to be there. I'm not a big Jazz guy. I don't know if they're going to be there quite in the mix for the top 6, but you have Portland, who's been to the playoffs a lot of times with Dame. The Lakers could figure something out. I mean, AD looked good since he came back. The Kings need to kind of silence some of these doubts. They need to show they belong. And I think, myself personally, I'm not sure how other people feel out there, but I said with Deuce and Mo on Friday, I'm kind of moving on from the playoff play-in aspirations. I would like the team to finish top 6. I think that they're that good. But the defensive side has to improve. The offensive side, it's number 1. I mean, they're the number 1 offense in the NBA right now. That is not the problem. And it has been local. The last 2 games it has been. But I'm not worried about the long-term, the offense, the state of the offense long-term. It's the defense. And teams at the top, Denver and Memphis, are really good defensive teams. And the past 2 games, we've seen what happens when the Kings get taken out of it. So, again, you got to play defense to win games, and the Kings belong, in my opinion, in the top 6. But if they want to stay there, defensive impact, it has to show up sooner or later. And that doesn't really fall on the guys on the roster as much as it might fall in the front office. It kind of falls on both, of course, but they need help. And Mike Brown said that after the game. He said it's getting repetitive, saying the same thing. I want more from the defense, but it's just not happening. So is that a message to Monty? I mean, maybe not, but they definitely need some other hands in there.
Talk with Frankie Cartoscelli here on the Folsom Lake Honda Hotline. Folsom Lake Honda, your one-stop Honda shop. Frankie, De'Aaron Fox has been so good in the fourth quarter. He did it again the other day, but it felt like the other day he kind of just he couldn't make shots. He was going through the first 3 quarters, and a lot of other guys were helping out. Yet you get to the fourth quarter, everything is all about Fox, and he didn't quite get the help he probably needed. It's great to see him do what he does in the fourth quarter, but can we get a little bit more of De'Aaron in quarters 1 through 3?
Yeah, and that was a big critique I was seeing on Twitter. Why can't he do this at the beginning of the game or all game long? And it's a good question. I mean, I maybe conserving power. I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure how much energy it takes out of him. I assume it's like he's saving. It's almost as if he's saving his energy for the fourth quarter. But maybe if you could spread that out over the whole game, that'd be great. But I mean, I guess it's a decent problem to have when you have a player that can just take over games in the fourth quarter. But as we saw, it doesn't really matter much if you dig yourself in a hole. And the Kings really could have used that punch and really in the game. And maybe it's a point of Mike Brown and his offense having to run through him more in the beginning of the game. I mean, obviously Harrison Barnes has been playing so well. He was getting some shots early. They weren't falling. The 3-point shots total for the Kings were not falling. They shot 27%. I mean, when the threes aren't falling, this team struggles to win games. They're 1-8 this season when they shoot 30% or lower. But De'Aaron, they need more from him, absolutely, the first 3 quarters. Just how can they do that? I mean, do defenses adjust? It's hard to say. It's a question, I guess, that would be nice to ask if I was out there in Minnesota for sure, just to see if it's an energy consumption or conserving thing. But it's like I said, De'Aaron Fox, they call him Mr. Fourth Quarter, but maybe they need someone else to step up and be Mr. Quarters 1 through 3. Can it be him? We're going to see. But again, to me, having someone that can take over games in the fourth, it's a good problem to have. But they need someone to step up quarters 1 through 3.
As we tumble towards the All-Star break, the trade deadline, and more, follow Frankie and the entire digital team over at Sactown Sports for all kinds of inside information, videos, writings, and so much more, including this show each and every week. Thank you, buddy. Talk to you in a week.
Thank you, guys. Enjoy that Neapolitan breakfast. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you.